All right, welcome back to another watercolor class. Today we're going to be doing this little jellyfish here, and I'll go over some basics with you. I did go ahead and wet my colors, and so today I'm just using a very inexpensive Canson watercolor paper. I think when you first start out, it is important to use materials that you're not afraid, like if you mess up or you don't like it, because it really is important to practice. And so, with that, just learn to paint on different papers, and then when you're doing something more meaningful, you can use something more, nicer quality paper. But it's good to experience different things, so you kind of learn to read your paint and what's happening, and so you can adjust accordingly. Excuse me. So today we're going to be using both our ultramarine blue and our phthalo blue. So if you look at the difference here, the ultramarine blue has a little bit of a red undertone. The phthalo blue it's a little more on that like green side. So they each have their own things that they're used for that's very helpful, but we also can mix these colors together and get a really nice blue that's a little more neutral sometimes, and so that's what we're going to be kind of using for some of our blues. But you can see we've got different tones in there, so we will be able to use probably both of them in different strengths as well. So the only thing I really have to worry about here, and I really don't need to mess too much with drawing it in, is I'm going to draw that hood area of the jellyfish. And then the thing that we want to remember is that we're kind of looking up inside of it. So we're going to draw these edges here that are going to be kind of curved, and then I'm going to kind of bring my jellyfish kind of coming down. This one's kind of going this way. This one happens to go a little more that way. I don't stress out too much about always doing things the same exact way, because I want to have each experience to be different. I'm not trying to create an exact duplicate of that. So you'll see that a lot in my classes and the samples that I have. It's art, so you want that bit of for expression. So the one thing we want to notice here on this, I want to really thin this down, but the inside of this jellyfish, we want to keep that pretty light and clear. So when we go to lay in, first we're going to have that be very light, and I'm just going to kind of come on around. I can make that edge a little irregular. And so here's the thing where a lot of people get stuck. They do that little outline there. So I'm rinsing out my brush, blotting it off. I'm getting the color out. And so now I'm going to come back over that line. And I just want it to kind of fade away. I don't want to leave that harsh outline on my whatever I'm painting. It's just going to look nicer if we kind of control those edges. And then under here, the second edge, I can just kind of do that in a little faintly here. All right. So while I've got this and it's wet, and we've also, where we've pulled that into the inside, that paper is probably a little damp in here too, or I can add a little bit. If that's too much, I can always blot it out. But now I can come in and let's pick some of this ultramarine blue, and I can kind of come and strengthen up, this edge here. And since the paper is wet, it's going to allow me to diffuse that, because we don't want it to look like a coloring book. Coloring book is when you've got everything and it's outlined. So again, I'm going to get rid of the color and just come in with a damp brush. And again, I can just kind of come in, soften that edge, diffuse it out. Okay, and this is where I'm kind of a lazy painter that way. I will turn my board, like pick it up and turn my board if I'm painting on my own, but I'm going to try to keep this upright so you guys don't have to deal with that. But I'll usually take this little board and I'll turn it all ways just to make it easier for myself. There's no need to struggle or make it more difficult than it has to be. Then again, kind of keep coming over these edges a little bit. So I do want some of that in a little bit before I go to put in some of the trundles, because this is dimensional and we are going to see those edges a little bit from the other side. So I'm just going to soften these, strengthen that edge up a little bit. Okay. And so here's where I can also pick up a little bit of that Viridian green, a little sap green. I'll probably kind of use a little bit of a blend between those as well. Okay, don't need too much of this. That's why I'm kind of blotting it out a little bit. Just kind of keep it light. And then here's where I can kind of come and bring some little soft touches of this in here. Again, I can kind of come in and strengthen up that edge. And there's not right or wrong. Like, I can come and make this all more green than where that one on the hood, it's more blue. This is art. You could really do this in any color combination. So I'm picking up a little blue here. So at this point, I would let that dry a little bit of that color in here, so it all kind of works together. I'll let that dry. So now I'm going to work on the trundles a little bit. So on these, you can see I've got some that are a little more straight, some that are a little more frilly. I've got some that overlap to each other. And so the thing I see people make a mistake on this is that, like, they'll do each one and each one and each one. It's going to look more natural if we do have some crossing and some where they come in and they disappear back behind here. It's going to look a little more organic. And so with that I'm going to let that kind of guide me a little bit. So I'm going to use kind of a darker blue. I pulled a little green. And so I'm going to come right in here under the hood. And you can see I'm going to come in. I'm just using a little squiggly stroke. Okay. And I'm thinking, just think about how that might be moving in the water. I'll do maybe another one in that color. Okay, and we'll come in and we'll have this one crisscross. See, the other thing is on these edges here, don't have them end all the same either, because that's gonna that's another thing that can kind of make it look a little more stiff. So now I'm going to pick up a little bit of the stronger green. bring a little bit of that sap green in there because I really like that color that's in here. And so I'm going to make some little frilly ones. Okay, we'll kind of come in through here. Okay, gotta have one that comes this way. And so once you get some of these laid in, it becomes a little bit easier, and then you're just going to think about how can I crisscross these. I can bring in some of this, I haven't rinsed out my brush, the phthalo blue, and so maybe here I'm going to do these a little more thin and wispy. I'm just going to let those kind of interact, and they might come in, disappear. Come up over here. Okay, now got a lot of green over here, so I just want to bring in. So for, kind of gets to the point where it gets a little stronger, and everything's kind of running in, twisted into each other. So I'm showing you a little quicker version of this. Obviously I've spent a little more time on that. If some of the lines are broken, that's okay. That's not going to be, won't be a big deal. And let's bring in a little bit that way. Okay, so now into these, if I come in and start loading in, I don't have to put this color everywhere. Let's get a little bit stronger though. And if I come back over these and strengthen up maybe some of the frilly ones that I put in, that's going to make them a little more dimensional, a little stronger. Here. So just kind of finding places to add that in. I'll come in with this stronger green. And I'm just kind of dotting and tapping. So there's, like I said, all kinds of things that you can do with this that just keeps it nice and organic. A couple of these I'll go over just to make them a little stronger. But these, if you did like a little set of them, again, they will make a really cute little note card set. I've done these before with a collection of different sea animals. So I'm going to come back up to the hood now. Let's have a little time to dry. Again, I'm just using this kind of color combination I've had up in here. So I'm going to pull in some of this darker, and then kind of before I get too far, go ahead and soften. So we've used like 2 blues and 2 greens here. If you only had 1 blue and a green, if you wanted to bring some variation to those colors, you could always use a little yellow, like to brighten them up. Again, I want to soften that inside edge. to strengthen up back in here too. We kind of see that coming around. Now, one thing I didn't do on this one, but if you're looking for what are those other little things I can do to add some artistic qualities to it, here I can pick up a little yellow, and then I can just kind of tap in super soft, super light. Okay, and I can even bring some little hints of yellow in here. Just kind of makes it look a little fuller. Okay. And again, one of my favorite things I like to do is, again, playing with that playful quality. We can add some little splatters, which in this case they kind of help to give the feel of maybe some bubbles here with our watercolor. And there you have a super easy, quick jellyfish that you can do for practice.